86% of organizations value professionals that upskill to advance their careers. It's never too late. Enroll for a self-paced online course to begin upskilling in monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal and infant young child nutrition. Apply today to enjoy a 10% discount.
Hello once again to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you're joining us from. And welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar's topic, hosted by Humanitarian Global, is cash and voucher assistance, utilization of cash and voucher assistance in facilitating humanitarian aid. We will begin with salutations from the team here at Humanitarian Global. As I always say, we are a very big team. And before we do that, before I invite our team members to say hello, I'd like to just mention a few house rules. So house rule number 1 is kindly make good use of the chat section. Interact with us. Do let us know where you're joining from. Do let us know if you're interested in the cash and voucher assistance program training. I have been able to share a link with participants. So you can click on the link if you're interested in that course, or if you're interested in what our expert of the day today, Onyango Onyach, will be talking about. Do let us know. You can even share your contact details with us. You can share your email address as well as your phone number, and our team will be able to reach out to you. Remember, when you share such details with us, only the team members are able to see. It's not open data to everyone because we do protect your data privacy. House rule number 2 is in the Q&A section. Today's topic is actually quite engaging, quite interactive, and there will be an in-depth discussion on cash and voucher assistance. If you have any question, kindly do direct your questions to the Q&A section. House rule number 3. At the very end of our experts presentation, that is Onyango Onyach, there will be a question and answer session. And during this period, we will ask participants to come on board and ask questions, and we will allow participants to unmute themselves. During this period, I will ask participants who are interested in asking questions to raise their hand, and we will allow them to speak. So kindly refrain from raising your hand at this particular time. And in case if you do have a question or a concern, or there's something wrong with you have a technical issue, kindly direct it to the chat section and we'll be able to address it. As of now, when you raise your hand, we might not be able to engage with you until the Q&A bit of this session. With that said, I'd like to bring my team on board to say hello. Starting with me, my name is Diana. I am the Academics and Training Coordinator here at Humanitarian Global and the moderator for today's webinar. With me, I do have Sheila. Sheila, you can introduce yourself to the team and say hello.
Hi, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Sheila. I'm the Academic Registrar at Humanitarian Global, and I do look forward to a very interactive session. Karibuni.
Thank you so much, Sheila. We also do have Ian.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our session this morning. We do look forward to a resourceful and engaging session. As Diana has mentioned, for any queries, any comments, please engage us on the chat or the Q&A section. And we do look forward to really engaging with you. Thank you, and enjoy the session.
Thank you so much. We also have two team members working behind the scenes to ensure that we are also live streaming this webinar on Facebook and everything runs smoothly in terms of the technical aspect. Brian and Anthony, they do send their salutations to everyone. I would like to welcome our expert for the day, Onyango Onyach, just to say hello before we proceed. Onyango Onyach, I believe everyone would like to just hear your voice a little bit. You can say hello to everyone, introduce yourself, and then we'll come back to you.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Onyango Onyach. And today I'll be your moderator. Thanks so much, and hoping to have a wonderful session with each and every one of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Before I bring back in Onyango Onyach to talk about a little bit more about CVA in short, I'd like to let you know that we have enrolled a short course starting in September on cash and voucher assistance programming, which is the topic for today. And I'd like to just talk a little bit and just show you, I'm currently sharing my screen, so if you can pay attention to the screen on the cash and voucher assistance programming starting this September. So this is the course itself. This is what we're going to be touching on today. As you can see, 6 modules, very interactive. And this course is directed at anyone in the humanitarian development and aid field or anyone looking to join. It could even be someone who's working in government and in accounts and needs to have a know-how of how cash and voucher assistance is conducted within the humanitarian development and aid field. So the mode of learning for this course will be through virtual classrooms, whereby you get to interact with a trainer, in this case, Onyango Onyach, virtually. And through interacting with the trainer, like I've mentioned, there are 6 long modules. You're able to follow through with the modules step by step with the trainer, meaning you're not being left behind. In addition to that, you will have other participants joining this course, and you'll also get to not only engage with them, be in an interactive classroom, but as well as network with them. Remember, Humanitarian Global reaches all corners of the world. And as someone, for instance, who is in Tanzania, will be able to engage with someone who is in Australia. So that way, not only are you learning, are you building your knowledge, but you're also building your professional and personal network. Another reason for us undertaking the course virtually through Zoom and interacting with the trainer one-on-one is so that we ensure that the skills we want to impact on you in terms of cash and voucher assistance are actually impacted, that you're able to learn as we move together and no one is left behind. The course takes approximately 1 month, and the course costs $250. And normally we take a number of approximately 10 so that we can be able to allow for there to be engagement during the classroom. Remember, this class starts in September. Although we already have numbers, we already have people who are already registering for this course today as we speak. We have been able to share the link with you on the chat section. In case if you're interested, you can be able to click on that link. And once you click on the link, you come to this page. And when you come to the page that I'm currently sharing, you click on apply now. And when you click on apply now, there will be a course application form that will be generated. And once you've clicked on that course application form, you fill in your details and submit, and our team will be able to get back to you and assist you through the final processes of payment and registration to the course. So this is what the form does look like. Alternatively, you can always come and request a callback, and our team will be able to reach back to you. Something else you can be able to do today, if you're interested in this course, is let us know in the chat section by giving us your details, that is your phone number and your email address, and our team will be able to reach out to you with even more information on the course and also how to enroll for the course. With that said, I would like now to welcome our expert, Onyango Onyach. He's going to be talking about cash and voucher assistance and the utilization of cash and voucher assistance in facilitating humanitarian aid. So the floor is yours, Onyango Onyach. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Diana, for that. I'll directly delve into my presentation. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we are able to see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. And once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the team members present for this webinar. As you've heard, my name is Onyango Onyach, and I'll be taking you through the introduction to cash and voucher assistance, or rather utilization of cash and voucher assistance in facilitating humanitarian aid. And basically what I'll touch base in on this particular webinar is, one, I'll introduce you to cash and voucher assistance. Maybe also be touching about a little bit on the preconditions of cash and voucher assistance implementation. I'll also touch a little bit on the appropriateness of cash and voucher in specific humanitarian contexts. Next is also to the step-by-step implementation of cash and voucher assistance. And lastly, the role of team members in cash and voucher assistance. Yeah, and without further ado, I'll directly delve into my presentation. One is to the introduction of cash and voucher. Ideally, cash and voucher has two specific, the introduction to cash and voucher, it has two specific definitions. And the first one, it refers to all programs where transfer of vouchers or goods and services are directly provided to recipients. And in the humanitarian context, we use the term provision of cash or vouchers given to individuals, households, community recipients. Remember, this assistance should not be given to the government or any other state actors. And this includes remittances and microfinance in the humanitarian context. We have to be very careful when introducing cash and voucher, because humanitarian aspect also, we have to give the dignity to the beneficiaries. That's why you refer to it as humanitarian assistance and provision humanitarian assistance to individuals, households, and community recipients. Yeah. Next, I'll touch a little bit on the preconditions of cash and voucher implementations. One, before you do any cash and voucher assistance program in any region or in any country, one, you need to ask yourself acceptance of the cash and voucher by the host government. For example, here in Kenya or either even in Somalia, does the government authorize you to be able to do a cash and voucher program? That is a very important thing that you need to work with. You need to know that the government accepts it. If you have a buy-in, you can be able to move forward. Number two, acceptance and preference of the target groups. For our case, the target groups usually is the community. Community members need to be consulted first and also consulted in terms of the delivery mechanism. What has worked in the past, the level of success, particularly also the vulnerable groups. And for our case, we're talking about maybe women, people living with disabilities, children, and did the mechanisms that took place earlier on, did it work? Did it augur well with the community? Did it augur well with the women and children and the people with disabilities? Was it welcomed? So those are the things that we also need to put into place before implementing any cash and voucher program in any field. Next is a functional market. You can't do a cash and voucher programming if you don't have a functional market. Functional market is whereby you have where people can go and buy goods freely, exchange goods for money, exchange goods for voucher that is being given. So we need to have a functional market whereby someone can go to the market and buy his or her own goods and get goods that are available and will be required to be used by the host communities. And then something else that is also very important is the accessibility to the shops or to the markets. Accessibility in terms of it's easy for a beneficiary or other community member. As you remember, up there we talked about that we need to target the communities that are maybe people who are vulnerable. You need to have a market that is easily accessible to this vulnerable group of people, whereby you don't have a market that we don't have roads. Yes, we've given beneficiaries or community money through their phones or anything, but they are not able to walk to the nearest shop, or rather there are no roads. It's not safe to be able to go there. So a precondition is to have accessible shops or markets where each and every person can walk there and freely go and do their shopping, or rather buy their commodities and head back home safely without any problems or any hitch. Another precondition is we need to have traders who are willing to and able to participate specifically in the voucher programming, because one, voucher programming also involves, you can't do voucher programming if you don't have traders, or rather the market, or rather the shops. We need to have shopkeepers who are willing to also assist the organization to ensure that beneficiaries or rather to participate in the whole process of ensuring that beneficiaries, or rather the host community, will be able to get their entitlement as agreed, or rather as planned by the specific NGO that is doing this cash and voucher programming. Something else that is also very important is an availability of an FSP. FSP is a financial service provider. Financial service provider in terms of, like in Kenya, we have maybe Safaricom, and maybe in Somalia, I can talk of maybe having Telsom and maybe the Habshir and all that. So you need to have that because we'll be using those kind of financial service providers to be able to transfer either if it's cash or voucher entitlements to the beneficiaries. Next is to have a safe and inclusive delivery and payment mechanism. This is what comes in. As you have seen up there, we've talked of having an FSP. But now a safe and inclusive delivery and payment mechanism is like an example here in Kenya where we have M-Pesa. M-Pesa is safe and inclusive, and as long as you have a Safaricom line, you can be able to transfer your funds. I know in Somalia we have is it called the ZAD? Yes, we have ZAD that we also funds can be transferred in the same way. So those are the things that we also need to take into consideration so that when beneficiaries are being given cash, they're able to easily get their entitlement on a regular basis. The risk factors listed and documented, something that you need to know, you need to list and document the risk factors. What are the risks of giving out cash? What are the risks of transferring cash? What are the risks of vouchers? So these are the things that we need to document. We'll be talking about this further in when we start classes, so that you can be able to see what are risks, the risks that are involved with this kind of cash and voucher implementation. Next, we need to also have staff and organizational capacity. You need to have staff that have the capacity to be able to handle this cash and voucher process. And that's why we have this webinar, and that's why we also be having a training that will take place, so that we have staff who are equipped with the skills necessary to run a cash and voucher programming and ensure that it runs smoothly, meeting the standard of operating procedures that are set down, or rather the ground rules that are set down in implementing a cash and voucher programming, or rather cash and voucher project. Now, we'll delve into the appropriateness of cash and voucher in specific humanitarian contexts. Number one, the core objective of a cash and voucher is to address basic human needs. That is something that we need to have at the back of our mind. Any humanitarian, any NGO that is doing cash and voucher, one is for them to address the basic human needs, or to protect and establish their livelihoods of the vulnerable groups. What happens is we have situations where we have maybe vulnerable groups of communities that are not able to meet their basic needs. So what happens with this cash and voucher? The appropriate one is we need to ensure that we are giving cash and voucher to host communities that are not able to meet their basic needs. So our main aim is to ensure that they're able to meet their basic needs in terms of food, shelter, and clothing. Apart from that, in case there was any disasters that took place, this cash and voucher, its main objective is also to bring a household, or bring a vulnerable community, or bring a vulnerable person back to his or her feet. So we are giving cash entitlement. If, for example, you had some livelihoods, or maybe you had your own goats, you had your shop, and big disaster struck, and that shop, by bad luck, it was swept away by maybe water, flooding waters, and all that. So this cash and voucher that is being given is to make sure that it returns you back to your original state. And that is the main goal for cash and voucher programming. And that's why you find it's being done mostly by government organizations and non-government organizations, to be able to bring people back to their normalcy, to address the basic human needs that is required by community members. Next is a choice. One, cash and voucher provides households with a great degree of choice. One, why we say this is, when you give a community or maybe a household cash or voucher, he is on our way of going to a shop and deciding on what he or she will be able to buy, as opposed to the old way of giving out in a fragile context. We used to give out in-kind food, or rather give food commodities. Like, for example, if you give maize meal in Somalia, that one is not somehow accepted. In Somalia, people like rice. We call it bris. So if you give them maize, in terms of in-kind, that one, you're not giving them a choice. But when you're giving out cash or voucher, you're giving the beneficiary strength to have that choice, to be able to go to the shop and buy whatever he or she is wants to buy, he or she deems that is really required for his or her household. Next, dignity. When you give out cash, it offers maintains people's dignity by giving them a choice. Yeah, you give all dignity. You don't because with cash sometimes when we will be talking about this, how cash can be transferred through the phones and all the rest. So we are not addressing we're not showcasing that all these people are in need. You know, sometimes it's also not right that yes, maybe I'm not up to that level, but I'm queuing to be able to give an assistance in terms of food, in terms of all that and all that. But with cash and voucher, there's this dignity because, for example, if we mentioned that we'll be giving out cash to beneficiaries, what we need is just your SIM card and your telephone number, and you're able to transfer that cash. And no one else will be able to know that this particular person, rather Onyango Onyach, he's going for either relief food because of this. So you see the dignity of this person is covered. And that is the basic also goal for NGOs. We are not supposed to be there to shame people. We are supposed to maintain their dignity and ensure that they are living a comfortable and good life free of any stigma or any someone looking down upon them. Yeah. Another thing that we can talk about is the flexibility. Cash can be used for multiple purposes. Maybe you can buy for it food, you can pay hospital bills, you can pay rent, you can pay your transport, as opposed to the old-fashioned way of giving out in-kind. Yes, NGOs used to give out in-kind food, but you find that sometimes like you give out food that a community does not like. You see, at the end of the day, it's a waste because this food, like maize, will be given to goats. But that one you have not sorted out. You've not sorted out the problem. So, or rather, a family requires to go to the hospital, but you're giving them food. But the basic need is to pay for hospital services. So you see, that's why flexibility. You have flexibility in terms of cash and also on voucher. So that's why also it's very appropriate in specific humanitarian contexts. Something else about it, it's safety. Electronic device delivery makes sense help to reduce distribution and mass gatherings. And for the previous pandemic that was there, I remember we used to have COVID, and this gathering, most countries didn't want people to gather at one particular point to be able to get the entitlements. And that's why the cash and voucher was really embraced at that particular time. That's why you find that you do beneficiary registration, beneficiaries are given vouchers or even cash, and they manage themselves and they don't come crowded in one specific place to be able to get the entitlements. So it was found that this method was safe, and also in terms of giving out funds, because you see cash, you'll send it through the phones. So there's no way that you get in touch with the physical cash. Also vouchers, you give out vouchers, beneficiaries go to the specific vendors, they get the entitlement and be able to go home. So there's no place that people are involved with cash, or also there's no place that people are meeting to be able to congregate in one area to be able to get the entitlement in terms like the way we used to give out food previously. Yeah, so it really saved a lot in terms of safety of the beneficiaries, the NGO community, and also in terms of curbing the spread of the pandemic that was there. I know it's still there, but we are taking it on the low, the COVID that was there. But this cash and voucher has really sorted it out so that those endemics are no longer there. Cost efficiency. It seems that cash and voucher are likely to be cheaper and faster to distribute than the in-kind, such as the distribution of food and kits. Like I mentioned, with cash and voucher, as long as beneficiaries have been registered, even if I'm sitting here in Nairobi, I can just authorize funds to be sent to specific group of people as long as I have their numbers. Or rather, I can print vouchers and ensure that beneficiaries get them wherever I am, even if I'm in Nairobi. But for this other way, or rather the old method way of giving out in kind, you need to have staff, you need to have a car, you need to have lorries to be able to go to the distribution centers. You do the registration, you have to do mass screening, you have to always go back and confirm that the food has reached. You have to hire a warehouse, you have to hire storekeepers to be able to look after that food. You have to hire people who loaders, you have to hire people who do the distribution. So you find that it was somehow expensive, and that's why most NGOs, or rather the humanitarian world, found it appropriate to go the cash and voucher way because they found it to be cost efficient and easy and cheaper to run. Yeah. Also, another thing that is also appropriate was is in terms of cost effectiveness. It is seen that programs were able to achieve their results at a lower cost compared with alternatives. Because, for example, if you say you want to give out, if you're doing maybe a food for work project, and you mentioned that you will be paying people cash once they have done their activity. You find that maybe if it's building a road or maybe doing a road or a dam, beneficiaries find it more appealing, or rather the host community find it more appealing if they are given cash as opposed to the old way of doing things of giving out food. It's more lucrative if I have cash in my pocket to be able to go and buy commodities for my family that they require, as opposed to you giving me food. And why we are saying that it enables progress to achieve, because people are more derived, or rather people are more pushed to the cash and voucher, and they'll work extra hard to ensure that they achieve what the NGO, or rather what the project had. And at the end of the day, you find the program, or rather the project achieves its results, as opposed to this other way mention of someone will say that I'm working this hard and then I'm only getting food. So you see, food is not appealing to everyone. But if you give me cash and voucher, it's appealing because I'm sure, 100% sure, I'll be able to bring food to my family, to cater for my family's needs. And at the end of the day, this food for work, whereby you work to be able to get, or rather food for assets, you cash for assets, whereby you be able to work and then you're given cash. It's easier and it's more lucrative, and someone is readily available to go and work and ensure that the program meets its requires objectives and targets. Cash and voucher is also seen to be an economic recovery and support. I think I talked about it before, because it has potential on local markets and traders. Cash and vouchers locally stimulates businesses and markets, because you see that here there's money that is coming back into circulation into the local markets. So when there's money in the local markets, that basically automatically ensures that, for example, if you take money as an NGO, you take money to the local market, you empower the traders will still ensure and go and buy extra commodities based on the wants, needs and wants of the community members. So you see, it helps in the economic recovery and also support and enhances growth in particular regions or areas. Yeah. So it's a very appropriate, and it really helps in the various contexts that that cash and voucher is implemented. There's also talk about the financial empowerment. Use of the local finance service providers, such as the mobile phone operating and bank institution, can help achieve sustainable access, which is potentially powerful for gender responsive and transformational programming by enabling diverse groups to access economic independence and empowerment. In other words, the use of cash can serve to distribute power through the provision of money to diverse groups. For example, there are communities that sometimes have their own merry-go-rounds, or rather their own circles. And with this kind of implementation, cash and voucher, if particular NGOs come to the ground and give people cash after a disaster, and they're able to provide cash on a monthly basis or something like that, you find that there's empowerment to the people, because sometimes I've seen in different communities whereby some communities, as long as they have food, they can sustain their food. This cash is able to be used. They can do their own small circle, or rather they can have their own merry-go-round and buy assets that maybe they do not have. In what terms? Maybe, for example, they can be 10 people at one particular time, and they bring resources together. In maybe the first month, they buy maybe, even if it's a cow for the first beneficiary. The second month, they collect their money if it's buying another cow for the second beneficiary, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, you find that there is empowerment that is being given to these community members. This cash will not go to waste, but at the end of the day, maybe this project comes to an end. You find that each and every community member has cows, and these cows are producing milk. So that is the kind of financial empowerment that I'm talking about. Yes, something else is in terms of social protection. You find that the cash and voucher can link existing government-led social safety nets to provide longer-term financial support to vulnerable people, reaching a larger number of households and opening up opportunities to launch additional messaging, awareness, and awareness raising, etc. So in terms of social protection and also the government, what happens is you see, with this kind of cash, you find that people are able to be empowered, or rather, people are able to be strengthened to be able to even take loans. For example, you can take a loan because you're empowered to be able to get a loan, because at the end of a month, or rather, if it's a project that is running, because if any good NGO comes on the ground, he'll tell you that we have this kind of project. It's a cash and voucher project. You'll be running for maybe 12 or 1 year. So you're able to plan yourself. And if you're given cash, you're able to know, I can do this, this, and this for this cash. So at the end of the day, it links the beneficiaries, the social government, to be able to provide safety nets for a longer term financial support to vulnerable people. They can go and borrow and be able to pay back. And so you see, this is the benefits that the cash and voucher is also bringing to the hosts and local communities. The next is short-term cash injections allow households to meet their immediate basic needs, while also reducing their economic vulnerability to shocks and risks. When you talk about, because we have this cash, and beneficiaries able to meet their immediate needs. You won't find that people lack food, lack shelter, lack hygiene, and all that. And this, I think, I also talked about it, is just an additional to what we had talked about earlier on. Another income enabling outcome is in child protection, education, and youth. By supporting adolescents who have experienced violence, abuse, and exploitation to recover, including assessing essential services or providing cash for school fees. So you see that cash and voucher enables outcomes. It helps in child protection. It helps in the education sector. It helps in the youth economic empowerment, in ensuring that they recover, including access to essential services like going to school, having medical facilities, or even providing cash for their school fees. So you see, it is an enabling factor, and it's a form of child protection, and also bringing education to the specific area that it was vulnerable. This is also something that we talked about. Cash and voucher helps to build resilience, and also decreases dependability beyond the scope of emergencies, linking to ongoing social protection as well as development programming. When you give cash to particular beneficiaries or into a host community, you build resilience, because if I have cash in my pocket and it comes for even if it's 1 year, one is able to learn how to plan his or her own life for that particular time. And even as I mentioned earlier on, is we can get cash, and if someone had a shop and it was destroyed by maybe a natural disaster, maybe flooding and all that, this cash that NGOs are giving out, or this cash that the government will give out, will be able to return you to your normal life. And that is the importance of cash. And that is why cash is also very appropriate for the humanitarian kind of context. It builds resilience and decreases vulnerability beyond the scope of emergency. Vulnerability, or also decreases dependence, whereby people will be depending on maybe relatives to be able to support them to have a decent living. But at the end of the day, cash and voucher comes in to try and mitigate that, and also to ensure that everyone is at the same level. Yeah. Now we are moving on to the step-by-step process of implementing cash and voucher. The number one thing that we usually do is targeting. This is the process of selecting project participants, whether at the individual, household, community, or at geographical level. And all humanitarian assistance to some degree is targeted. And the first level of targeting is geographical, determining the area with which the program will be implemented based on information gathered through assessments. So the first level of targeting is geographical. For example, we can decide we go to Baidoa. When you're in Baidoa, in Baidoa, you have to target a specific area based on their levels of needs, based on the levels of vulnerability. For example, if I go to Dolo, maybe I can go to one IDP and look at an IDP and confirm this IDP has the most number of people, maybe children with disabilities, maybe people with disabilities, children who are more malnourished. So that is the first level of targeting that is usually done. Yeah. Further targeting may focus on cash and voucher. I think I've already talked about this in terms of children, unaccompanied children, those who are separated. Next is the choice of targeting method is also linked to the program objectives and design, budget, resources, and the capacity of the implementing organization and its partners. And that is basically dependent on the organization. It's very important to involve the local community, the government structures, the local organizations when establishing the criteria and subsequently selection and doing the registration process, because the local communities know their people more than you do. The government have the structures. They know who is this particular person. The local government, they're able to know this person is vulnerable or this person is not a vulnerable person. The local organization, we need to work, even if it's a big NGO, you need to work with the partner organizations on the ground, because they know they've worked with these communities before, so they know the most vulnerable people who can be able to be supported, or rather who are in dire need of this support. Yeah. Now is the process of registration, which is basically the collecting and recording of relevant information about recipients. And it also serves as a baseline data for monitoring, enabling the recipients to identify themselves so as to receive the transfer, and can also be used to calculate the transfer amount if it's done by household size. And that's also the next step, and it's very important because this is where now you're able to register the exact beneficiary that will form your lists of beneficiaries, or rather the community members that will be getting their entitlements. Something else also that you need to think about is the voucher designs. In cases where electronic transfers are not feasible, we usually use paper vouchers. And paper vouchers, for example, it should be considered that one, use the local language. You can't be using English and you've gone to a village like maybe, for example, I can talk of you've gone to an interior village somewhere very far and people do not speak English. So for vouchers should be translated into the local language, so that maybe the person who will be handling the vouchers is able to clearly read and understand. Even the beneficiary who's getting his voucher is able to understand what is being given. In terms of denominations, the vouchers should be flexible enough to allow the recipients to be able to make smaller purchases and be able to even get change. For example, if you're giving out vouchers, if for example maybe beneficiaries are entitled to like maybe $50 a month, it's also very important to sometimes just break down the vouchers up to have like 10, 10, 10. It's easier for a beneficiary to be able to shop and also be able to get his full entitlement when the denominations are broken down into smaller purchases. Another important thing that you need to think of, or rather to put into consideration when doing the vouchers, is the serial numbers. Serial numbers are used for monitoring and tracking the distribution of redemption or the vouchers. So what happens is when you're giving out vouchers to the community members, a serial number is also very important. And this serial number is very important to track you as an NGO practitioner, or rather, or as an NGO, to be able to tell that I gave out these vouchers and it was number 1 to 10. If a beneficiary comes, or rather if a vendor comes back telling me that I have a voucher number 11, you'll automatically know that this is not my voucher. So the serialization is very important to be able to track the vouchers from the source up to the end and up to the period that it comes back to for payment. We'll be discussing this in depth when we come to the training session. And additionally, maybe I can pick it up and also mention that even cash has serial numbers. When you're buying cash, when you're buying dollars, when you're exchanging any monetary value, they have serial numbers. And that is the basically thing. If you go to a bank, they give you money, they record it, especially for dollars. And in case you have a problem, you want to go and exchange it to any local bank and they refuse, you can go back to that specific bank and tell them you gave me this money with this serial number, and the local bank refused it. So kindly exchange it for me. And that's the same concept that we have with vouchers. You need to have the serial numbers in case of anything. Beneficiary is given a voucher. He goes to a vendor. The vendor refuses it. He can be able to return it back and say that you gave me this voucher, but it has not been accepted by the vendor. Or rather, if a vendor is paid by that, he accepts, gives out goods to the beneficiaries, and when he comes back to the NGO for payment, the NGO can query that serial number and say that automatically this was not our voucher, this is fake. And that is the checks and balances that we are talking about. Another thing in vouchers is the colors. It's usually very important to plan for vouchers plan vouchers you having different colors to be used on different days or even during different periods of distributions. For example, if you're giving out vouchers maybe in January, you can use a different color. You can use green. In February, you can use maybe blue. Just like that, to be able to have this control mechanism, and it's easier for you to be able to also monitor and have a quick check and have a quick look and say that this one is not our automatic. This is not our voucher. In terms of preventing fraud, the voucher should also include basic measures to minimize the risk of duplication and counterfeiting. For example, what I used to know, or rather what we've done before, is we used to print vouchers on special paper. We used to have the serial number that was there. And also we used to reduce the number of people who are familiar with the design. We used to change the design of vouchers. Vendors should also be aware that forged vouchers will not be paid, and maybe also add a unique stamp, so that we have this real control measure from where the voucher had been issued to the person who has the voucher, to the person who will be paying the voucher, and also the person who will be verifying the voucher. So this is just a whole step. I've included other parameters inside there so that to add to the gist of this step-by-step of vouchers. Next is the distribution process. When working with a financial service provider, the cash and voucher distribution process will follow these steps. One, you need to discuss between the program staff and finance on the distribution planning. You need to have a plan beforehand. Before you do any distribution, you need to have a plan. You prepare the finalized electronic list of recipients. You need to have an electronic list, a beneficiary list upfront that is electronic, that will be shared by the financial service provider. You have to have a plan, as I've talked about, and also you need to have a help desk where beneficiaries can come and ask questions. You can be able to convey the issues. You can be able to tell them how much they'll be getting this month, and all that should be able to be conveyed at the help desk. Next, you need also to request for cash distribution order and get its approval. This one is usually done by finance, or rather, if it's a program staff, they do that in that specific NGO. They request for cash, the cash is approved, and then transfer of funds to the FSP. And why the funds are transferred to the FSP, a particular example is, for example, like in Somalia, when you're using the Abshir, we have to pay upfront. For example, if you have like 10 beneficiaries, each getting $100, an NGO that is doing cash and voucher approaches the financial service provider. They pay the 1,000 USD, and this 1,000 USD is credited to the telephone number of these specific 10 beneficiaries that we have. So once that has done, the beneficiaries will be able to get the entitlement. Remember, it's just by the click of a button, and they'll be able to get the entitlement on that regular basis. So that's why you're talking about the transfer of funds to the service provider. Then we usually do the transfer of the beneficiary data to the service provider. This is giving them the names and the telephone number where the funds will be transferred. Automatically, the financial service provider will review the beneficiary data, highlight any problems, duplicates, incorrect phone numbers, if any, and maybe communicate. If there is none, they'll automatically transfer the funds to the beneficiaries. Lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the role of the team members involved with cash. And this one is not cast in stone, and it's more of a basic cash and voucher programming, cash and voucher program, whereby we have the programs, finance, and monitoring and evaluation. But different NGOs have different ways in handling this, and they also have different ways of of who handles which particular step. But for this one, I'll give a basic of an ideal situation, but it's not cast in stone. It usually changes depending on the NGO, and also depending on, NGOs also have different capacities, because sometimes you might have, there's a big NGO, you can't compare an NGO like maybe, a big NGO that is a donor and a small NGO that is a partner. So each NGO has its own capability, and this capability comes down, it dwells down in terms of the kind of staffing that they have. So for my case, I talked about programs, finance, and monitoring evaluation. For the role of programs is one, they do the targeting of beneficiaries, they do the beneficiary selection, registration, and enrollment into the system, the distribution of identification cards, or rather, if it's vouchers, they do the distribution of the vouchers, and also they do the distribution, because I remember what used to happen is, before a beneficiary is given entitlement, we used to have, you print out an ID card with their pictures. We'll talk about this in depth. There are systems to do that, whereby you capture beneficiaries' data, you give them their ID, so as him or she to be able to identify with that particular project. So this is the role of the programs, to do that and distribute IDs to the beneficiaries. They also do the transfers, physical transfer of distribution of transfer to the beneficiaries, and they also do the reconciliation and final reporting. For finance is to cash replenishment, to project dedicated accounts. For example, what I mentioned earlier on is finance is to ensure that cash is given to the financial service providers. They effect the transfer to payments to service provider. They need to effect and ask the service provider to be able to ensure that the funds go to the beneficiaries, and lastly, they effect the payments. And for monitoring and evaluation is for them to monitor the market price monitoring, and seeing the cost of commodities that are in the market. And this is what dictates what each and every beneficiary will get at the end of the month. Because, for example, you can't give a beneficiary $50. You need to know the market and know what any particular household can be able to comfortably take home, because you can give him $50, and when you go to the market, you can only buy maybe vegetables or even maybe rice, and that $50 is over. So it's a role of the M&E to be able to know what is in the market and how much, what is the cost of commodities in the market, and this will dedicate, or rather dictate, the amount of entitlement that particular households will be getting at the end of the month. They're also responsible for tracking the transfer and delivery, ensuring that the right beneficiaries or the households get the entitlement on a particular month or a particular time. And lastly, they are also entitled to doing the PDMs, ODM, and on processes. PDM is the post-distribution monitoring, and also ODM is the on-site distribution monitoring, to be able to see the processes, how the things go, and also how to improve on these processes that are there, and report any problems that might occur during the PDM, or rather when they are doing the on-site distribution monitoring. And as I mentioned, this is not cast in stone. This is basic roles. I've just picked the specific departments within an ideal NGO, but other NGOs do things differently. But we'll be discussing this in length when we reach that particular point that we'll be doing. We will be having the real training for cash and voucher assistance. And that's it from my end, and that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Onyango Onyach, for that. I believe each one of us has been able to learn a thing or two on cash and voucher assistance. So remember, today's webinar is just an introductory session into cash and voucher assistance / programming. To undertake the course, the month-long course with us takes 1 month. You take 2 classes in a week for the 1 month. So to do that, kindly do register for the course itself. And I did forget to mention in the beginning that at the end of the cash and voucher assistance programming course, you will be able to be certified. You will be able to receive a digital certification on the same. So we do offer the certification for the longer course, not for the webinar, as a few participants have inquired. However, we will also be sharing the presentation as well as the recording for this webinar to our participants via the email they registered with and through our community forum. I've been able to put out the same information in the chat section. At this point, we go directly into the question and answer bit of today's webinar. So the first question comes from Mola. Mola asks, how can we conduct risk factors? Onyango, that is your question. Mola does ask, how can we conduct risk factors? Over to you.
Come again, maybe Mola can elaborate further. How can we conduct risk factors? But maybe let me just try to answer. What I'll try to do is based on previous experience, or rather based on what has happened before. The risk factors is what you usually do is you come up. This is not done by one person. This is not done by one person. You sit down as a department whereby you'll be doing cash. You sit down with the whole departments, like maybe programming, programs, finance, and also M&E, and see the processes that are involved in handling cash, and sit down and find where the risk factors. What is a risk? For example, if I want to distribute cash in a specific area, and you know that specific area, we have maybe gangsters. You cannot give out cash, physical cash, or rather you cannot give out maybe even if you give out vouchers and the beneficiaries are they once they get the entitlement, when they are going home and they are marked of their beneficiaries. So such kind of things, what I'll try to bring across is, one, you need to sit down with your specific departments, list down those risks that might be involved. It's a very broad topic. It's a very broad question that you've asked, but you sit down with your teams, identify the risks and identify the mitigating factors, and also identify who is responsible to mitigate this. For example, that's just an example that I've given you, whereby how can you conduct a risk factor, whereby, for example, if you see a particular area, if I give out cash to these people and you find that cash is a problem, or rather if you give out cash to maybe a household, to the household head being a father, and then he goes and use that cash to buy drugs, you see at the end of the day you've not supported it. So it's always good to give, maybe you can give out vouchers, and these vouchers are restricted in terms of when they go to a specific vendor, they are only entitled to some specific commodities that are there. So it is not opened. The voucher is restricted. So that is more of the kind of maybe I'll try to answer your question in that manner. I hope it was clear.
Thank you so much for that. So following that, Joel has a question as well. And Joel says that he does understand that cash vouchers is not about in-kind assets. However, what do we then call these vouchers?
Come again, sorry.
So Joel does ask, or rather understands that it's not in-kind assets when you talk about cash vouchers. So then what do you give the specific name for the vouchers? What do you call them? Do you just call them vouchers, or there's another name for it?
It is just vouchers. It is just vouchers. We have two kinds. For vouchers, we have paper voucher and electronic voucher. Apart from that, an additional, we'll have cash. For example, what I talked about is we have three modalities into this cash and voucher programming, whereby one, you can give beneficiaries cash, giving them the cash in terms of the physical cash, or rather giving them through their mobile phones. And if it's vouchers, we have two kinds of vouchers, the electronic voucher and the paper voucher. Electronic voucher is whereby you have a beneficiary given an electronic smart card, like the ATM card that you have. You are able to feed cash into that ATM, they go to a vendor and redeem the entitlement on a monthly basis. Number two, there's the kind of paper voucher whereby you have a specific paper voucher that is printed. You remember we were talking about the security features that you need to have in the paper voucher. It's printed, given to the beneficiary. He goes to a specific vendor, gets his entitlement based on the value that is posted in that voucher. But bottom line, what we are talking about is vouchers. They can go to specific vendors and get the commodities of values of a value that is in the paper voucher or in the electronic voucher. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And we do also have another question from Prince, and I believe there's also another participant who touched on the same when it comes to nutrition. So Prince does ask, how can one integrate cash and voucher programming with agriculture in development activities? We also do have a participant who mentioned the same, but in nutrition. So then the other participant, Yinebeb, did ask, can you kindly tell us something in appropriateness of CVA for nutrition outcomes? So it's the same question touching on nutrition and agriculture.
Thank you very much. I'll answer the agriculture one first, and I think I talked about it. We usually have projects that are called cash for work. So how to integrate cash programming in such is whereby you have beneficiaries, they work, and after they have done work, you're able to pay them. And at the end of the day, this one also generates income to the host community members, and also at the end of the day, it also elevates the community or rather the area. For example, I spoke about having a road. As an NGO can come, they've written a proposal, they come down to the ground and say that we'll be doing this road. But this road is not being done by the NGO. It is done by the host community members. So once you've done this road, maybe if it's 10-kilometer road for maybe 3 months, each month we're paying you a certain amount of money. So at the end of the day, you see that it's called cash for work, whereby you work, you clear the road, you ensure that the 10 kilometers road is finalized, but every month you get your entitlement. So that is how we can integrate cash programming into an agriculture, or rather into an agricultural way, or rather you can integrate it into a programming manner that benefits the communities. In terms of nutrition, what used to happen is, yes, for nutrition you find that beneficiaries, we mostly deal with vulnerable children or even vulnerable communities, or other children that are experiencing malnutrition. But how cash and voucher can be used, how different NGOs do this is beneficiaries can be given transport. You can give a beneficiary transport to be able to go to that specific area to be able to get his entitlement. Because I know mothers who have children who are malnourished, most NGOs, that nutrition is still there. They give out Plumpy-Sap, they give out RUTF, but you find that mothers come from very far and they cannot be able to, sometimes they miss because they can't, because like, for example, I'll take a very good example of maybe SOM. You find that it's very hard for a mother to walk maybe like 10-15 kilometers just to go to get his high entitlement. But if you give her transport money, that one is more of like a motivation, and she'll be able to go there, get the food's entitlement and go back. So that is also how cash is integrated into the nutrition projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I read out the next question, at this point, I'd like to welcome participants who would like to ask their question live during the webinar to raise their hands, and we will allow them to speak. Next, actually, before I do ask the question, because that does touch on the question, I'd like to acknowledge Abbas from Nigeria, who has listed a couple of challenges they do face when it comes to cash voucher transfers. And one of the things that mention is cash. This is when it comes to poor mobile network. There is the issue of carrying of cash. There is the issue of the rules that are implemented as well within the area that he does work in. And with that, just acknowledgement of what Abbas has shared with us, I'd like to then move forward to the question. Is from an attendee. Can you please inform me if there is any system that utilizes cash transfers?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And for sure, yes, we have systems. We have programming systems. We have systems that assist in cash programming. And what I can bring across the board, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be mentioning how other NGOs work, but for sure we have systems that do that, whereby they assist in the registration process. They assist also in the process of the distribution of cash, and you're able to monitor it. So they are there. And maybe what I'll bring across the board is I would like you to maybe join the training, so that when you join the training, I'll be talking much more about those and how they can do it and how you can be able to access them. So it's a yes. There are systems that do cash and voucher programming.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you also, Abbas. We actually do look forward to you joining this course. So we do acknowledge you and thank you so much. And something else I'd like to mention is during this course, you will be able to share your experiences, individual experiences while interacting with these programs. You'll be able to share your challenges and you'll be able to even come up with solutions, probable solutions for those challenges. With that, I would like to then move on to the next question. And before I do read out the next question, remember I did ask participants to raise their hands if they'd like to ask questions. So Omar, kindly prepare yourself with your question, and Omar will be followed by Abebe. So Omar followed okay, Abebe has lowered his hand. So it will be Omar followed by Abbas Kabiru. Thank you. So for the next question, this is again from Mola. So Mola does ask, what are the drawbacks of CVA interventions? I'll ask again, what are the drawbacks of CVA interventions?
Okay, thank you very much, Mola. That's also a very good question. The drawbacks for CVA interventions, that's why you find that we were talking about the appropriateness. Any project or any implementation has its own drawbacks. And for example, I'll just pick a very good example whereby someone talked about giving out, having poor infrastructure. For example, you want to transfer cash and you have poor infrastructure whereby you go to a particular community and the beneficiaries there don't have the know-how, don't have mobile facilities, don't have SIM cards whereby cash can be sent to them. Number two, for example, having maybe a government that does not acknowledge that. There are some governments that don't want the dependency, whereby some NGOs are giving out cash to beneficiaries, or are giving out vouchers to beneficiaries. So there are so many drawbacks to cash and voucher, but there are ways of mitigating them. You can say that there's someone, this was asking about giving out physical cash. It's very hard to carry cash from one region to the other because of maybe banditry, maybe people are being stolen from. So that's also another drawback. But to be able to curb that, you come up with maybe an electronic voucher or rather the paper voucher to be able to curb that. So you don't give out physical cash to beneficiaries, but you give them electronic vouchers and paper vouchers so that they can go to specific vendors and be able to shop. So you see, you minimize the use of cash, physical cash to beneficiaries to go shopping. So those are the kind of drawbacks that the cash and voucher has. And something else that maybe I can bring across the board is the expertise. Of cash and voucher programming is still, it's growing. It's still growing. It's not there yet, as opposed to, because we've been doing in-kind for a very long time, so many years. But the expertise is still not there. But there are trainings. We have trainings, and people are usually trained each and every time to be able to ensure that we have these processes in place and ensure that the cash and voucher programming moves smoothly and runs freely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Before I bring in Abbas to talk and ask his question, I have a question here, a final question. In the interest of time, all other questions shall be addressed in our community forum, which we have been able to share the link with you. So kindly do join our community forum and carry on this conversation. So I would like to ask you one final, very hot contested question. Which one intervention is the best, in kind or cash?
Definitely it's cash. Cash is the best intervention. In terms of beneficiaries, in terms of NGOs, in terms of everything. Cash is the best. Cash and voucher programming is the best because one, you give beneficiaries choice. A beneficiary, you give me food that I don't need, I will not eat it. I'll throw it away, I'll give it to the animals. But if you give me cash or you give me vouchers, I'll go to the shop and buy whatever I want. I gave a very good example in Somalia. I used to work there. That's why I really talk about, I'm really passionate about Somalia. I used to work in Somalia. We used to distribute maybe maize and pulses to beneficiaries. But you find that maize is not their staple food. Their staple food is rice. So you give them maize, Someone will not want to eat it. You'll be able to give it to the animals. But if you give me cash, I'll be able to go to the shop and buy my own rice and breeze and vegetable oil, and I'll be happy. So that's why most people prefer cash. Cash and voucher is the preferred method, and that is where most NGOs are moving. And if you can ask me for sure, right now, in the whole world, or rather in the countries that are vulnerable, the cash and voucher is really taking over. There is very, very minimal in-kind distribution. They are only remaining, what is being distributed so far is maybe the non-food items, and if not that, things to do with nutritional supplements like the Plumpy Up and the RTF. So in a nutshell, cash all the way. Cash is where the world is moving to. Thank you.
And then before again I bring in Abbas, because there's quite a good conversation going on in the Q&A section, then Noor does follow up with that and says, then what is the solution if the beneficiary has no mobile device and can't afford one? So what do you do in that case?
Very good, Noor. I will still go back to the paper voucher. You remember I said, I'll give you a paper voucher that has a value. This paper voucher, you'll go to your vendor and you'll get goods worth, that paper voucher, for example, I'll give you a paper voucher worth $10 or even $100. You go to the vendor that you already spoken to, that you've already contracted, and he'll give you goods worth $100. So there's always a solution for everything. If you don't have a phone, we'll have the paper voucher. If you have a phone, we'll give you cash to be able to do your distributions, or rather to do your purchases. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So then I would like to bring on Abbas with your question, followed by Shifero. So Shifero, you will follow Abbas. Abbas, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Abbas.
Okay, this is Abbas from Maiduguri, Northeast Nigeria, where we have the insurgency in the last 13 years, and we've been implementing some cash and voucher program. But actually, starting from the last question, is the issue that where the challenges still persist in terms of structures and systems, how do we address that? And I give you a specific example. You know, we have issues of poor telecommunication around this area, and also there are no vendors that could help in giving out this money. We also have a compounded problem of military issues around. You have to limit the amount of cash to carry and all that. So these are the three issues here. There are no mobile networks, there are inadequate vendors, and there are restrictions in carrying out money about. Then how do you go about your cash and voucher programming in this area? Thank you, and well done for the good work.
Thank you very much, Kabiru. I think I'll answer you in this way. Number one, what I'll mention, in such a scenario, the best alternative, actually number one, as I mentioned, an NGO is entitled to meet the basic human needs of the beneficiaries. That is the first point that I started with, meeting the basic human needs of a beneficiary. By doing this, is ensuring that the entitlement that they give, it's the NGO's responsibility to ensure that this entitlement reaches the beneficiaries. So for such a scenario to take place, one, you've said that movement of cash is restricted. There's no mobile network that is poor. So such a situation, what we usually do and what I'll advise is going the paper voucher way. Paper voucher in terms of you print your own paper vouchers, you select your vendors, and ensure that the paper vouchers are distributed to the beneficiaries, who in turn go to the vendors and get their entitlement. But yes, you've talked about that we have few vendors. But now this is where the NGO should be able to change its programming. Programming in terms of ensuring that they're able to have this maybe mobile to facilitate maybe the vendors to be able to come to a central location near the beneficiaries, where the beneficiaries can go freely and get the entitlement. Having mobile vendors to move from one location to the other, go there, serve the beneficiaries, and they move back, and then they find their own way to the NGO to be able to pay them the entitlement. That is how you'll be able to curb this. And this has worked in even other locations that have done. So it's just a matter of reprogramming yourself and ensuring that you go with the best alternative. And for your case, what I've mentioned is the best alternative is having paper vouchers, because you don't have a proper network and you also not allowed to carry cash. So go with the paper vouchers and ensure that the vendors are able to be facilitated to specific locations, having their mobile teams distributing the entitlement and going back and requesting for payment after the services has been done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. At this point, I do welcome Shifero to ask their question.
I already written my question, so no need to ask.
Okay, that is great. Then I would like to welcome Abdiresak Mohammed Isak with their question.
And thank you very much, and all of you here. I'm Abdiresak Mohammed Isak, and I'm from Somalia. I want to ask you, and when you are in the field and there is a food distribution, how could you manage if you receive, for example, extra food packages, and what action will you take when you are in the field? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdirazak. You've really asked a question that was not part of our webinar, but it's okay. I'll just answer it just for you to be able to understand, because I'm also an in-kind practitioner. What happens is when you get extra food in the distribution site, you're supposed to return it back. You return it back because when the food comes to you, usually comes back with a way bill. So for you, what is entitled for that specific location is what you pick, but return that food to the specific store. For example, I know in Somalia you get food from different NGOs. I can even mention maybe the biggest NGO. If you get food from them, you need to document that food and return it back for purposes of accountability. You're not supposed to distribute extra food to the beneficiaries, because remember, it is there is that entitlement that is required for each household, and the distribution plan was done on a monthly basis. So any extra food that you receive on the ground, you take it back to the NGO. They'll be able to return it back to the system, and beneficiaries will be given the entitlement the next month. So that is the bottom line. You take it back using a way bill, or rather a document. You document it properly and take it back to the warehouse that brought it back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Onyango.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, we will end there for today. But as you've been able to see, cash and voucher assistance is quite an interesting topic, especially for those of us look to go into the humanitarian field, into humanitarian work, to deliver aid and assistance. And it's usually a necessary skill for someone working in that field to be able to acquire. Again, I do welcome all participants to be able to register for our upcoming course in September. Remember, I did mention we only take a few numbers, and it's based on first come, first serve. Before I do end today's webinar, I'd like to remind you of tomorrow's webinar. I did share a link in the chat section asking participants to be able to register tomorrow's webinar. And tomorrow's webinar will be on food security and nutrition. And the topic will be understanding the dimensions of food security in the humanitarian sector. It will be tomorrow, 16th of August, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. East African time. Our speaker for the day will be Masi Nyangendo. So I do welcome everyone for tomorrow's webinar as well. We have shared the link. Kindly do click on it and register for the webinar. At this point, as we end, I'd like to thank all participants who were able to join today's webinar, all attendees, especially those who were quite interactive with us, were able to ask questions, share details, inquire about cash voucher assistance. And I do appreciate those of us who took interest in the upcoming course and were also able to share the details. Our team will reach out to you and be able to assist you in the registration process for the upcoming course. I would like to thank our expert for the day, Onyango Onyach. Thank you so much. I believe we've all been able to learn something new today. We've all been able to polish up our knowledge and skills today on the same. I'd like to thank the entire Humanitarian Global team for having facilitated this webinar. We really do appreciate the webinars that we do have, the weekly webinars. We do appreciate that we do have a place to be able to meet and talk about trending topics and talk about anything regarding the humanitarian development and aid field. With that, I do wish you farewell and hope to see you tomorrow, same place, same time for the webinar. The topic again will be understanding the dimensions of food security in the humanitarian section. I also do hope to see those of us who've actually registered for the course in the upcoming course. I do hope to see us in class in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.
My name is Adam Mohammed. I am a humanitarian person and a farmer at the same time. I am also a Nigerian. My journey as a humanitarian started sometimes around 2016 in the NYSC camp. You know, when you finish your degree program, you need to go for a year training. So in Nigeria, we call it NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. So while at the camp, I have this staff of CUSO International. CUSO International actually is a Canadian humanitarian organization that is working towards ensuring no poverty among the community in all. So they approached the serving corps members at the camp, telling them to come and volunteer with the organization in providing services in certain communities that they will be posted to. At first, I wasn't interested because I am a farmer. Then I realized that there are several areas where I can render my service to. I can also render my service to youths, encouraging them to have a sustainable means of livelihood in agriculture. There and then, I key in, I applied, I became a volunteer. So after volunteering with CUSO International, I then had the interest of working as a humanitarian person. I worked with CUSO International for a year, and thereafter I moved for my second degree studies, Masters in Agricultural Economics at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. So because of the distance of the place I was rendering the humanitarian service and the place I'm studying, I had to then resign from that particular role. Thereafter, while I was working, I was studying with at Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. Then I also had the opportunity to also volunteer with Action Against Hunger in Borno State. Because of the insurgency, the people in the IDP camp needed humanitarian service. Then I said to myself, I would volunteer to provide that service. After working with Action Against Hunger, thereafter I worked as a farm manager with Agro News Nigeria, and then here I am today working with FX Commodities Exchange, impacting life and providing humanitarian services to the humanity. While volunteering with CUSO International and Action Against Hunger, Feed the Future and all that on other short projects, I then developed that inherent, will I say, likeness of providing humanitarian services to the entire humanity. Then one day I was sitting on my laptop checking through online. Then I decided, I said, no, I need to look at some kind of humanitarian courses that I would attend so I can enhance my skills and my ability to deliver more in the humanitarian sector. So I went online and then I was searching there, and then I came across Humanitarian Global, and then immediately I signed up. I checked the programs that they have. I looked at one particular program that attracted my attention, which is monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, MEAL in short. So I then applied for MEAL program. So generally for MEAL program, I will tell you that it has been superb. Honestly, it has been very, very superb. If there is any word that's higher than that, I will use that. Then for what I have learned, wow, what I have learned actually is too enormous. It's not something I can actually share with you today or the whole of my life. But the things I can then remember that I can share with you is that for MEAL, in short, is part of our lives. In everything you do, you have to monitor, you have to evaluate, you have to account, and you have to learn in everything that you do. If you don't learn, like the famous saying, they say, the day you stop learning, that is the day you start dying. So actually, MEAL program entails everything that one needs in life. So I have learned a lot. Part of the learning from the program has assisted me in my job today as a humanitarian person. In everything that we do, from the inception of any project, I get involved and then I apply all the learnings that I have there to assist in the development of the basis of the project, how to monitor it, how to evaluate the project, how to get the indicators that will be used to evaluate the project, and at the end of the day to term it as a success or a failure, and also learn from it and how to also account for that particular project. So the learning from MEAL for me is enormous and it's not something that I can share within a short period of time, but I will tell you I have learned a lot. I would actually tell you Humanitarian Global, first of all, have all the skills that it takes for you to enhance your career as a humanitarian, and also they have the most of the